Hey guys,
Hello.
how are we all doing this week? We good?
Not bad. Good, good.
Let's see. Yeah, do a give me a number. Like, how? What do you rate between 1 and 10? What's your number? What do you reckon? 10 being amazing, not being really crap. What are you guys? I think
7.
a 7. Ooh, was that a 9? Bush would go, girl. Was that a 9?
I'm feeling good.
Hi.
Feeling good today. I'm feeling good.
Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. How are we doing, David? How are you feeling, David?
Yeah, no, I'm up there, man. I'm like an 8.
I'm loving this energy. Good to see you, Jay. Jay Star, good to see you, sweetheart. Do you know what I mean? Oh God, all these love. Yeah. Oh, we've got lots of people. Hey, Tara, lovely to see you.
Yeah.
Have we all having a good week?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm loving this energy. I am loving this energy. We're gonna get started soon because we've got quite a lot to crack on with. But I, as always, want to just give you some quick updates. And then those who are not here, I can update them again a little bit later. We are finally going to press tomorrow.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're finally going to press tomorrow. So what we'll do is we're going to send you out some assets, if you don't mind. It just says that I'm now a breakthrough leader. I can't remember the exact word. And if you wouldn't mind sharing it on your socials, that'd be great. And some of you guys sent videos. We've managed to cut them up, and we'll send you those that you can share if you want to as well. And that would be great. Yeah, and it's amazing. The mentors, we've started talking to your mentors, and a lot of them have come back and said yes, which is absolutely amazing. The cast list reads like the A to A list of who's who in TV. I mean, you guys have chosen some really amazing people. So what we'll do is we'll start introducing you guys to the mentors as of tomorrow. Emails will go out so you can start making those introductions. And lastly, there is our class. We asked you to do some feedback recently, and you were saying that you really want some more masterclass from industry people. So what we decided to do is do an additional session on Friday lunchtimes. If you can make it, you can make it, no pressure. But we've got Ben Frau, head of Channel 5, this Friday, which is amazing. Fantastic. And then after that, Rio, remind us who else we've got, because Rio's been hard at work, man. Rio, tell us who we've got coming up.
And then for May session, we have Danny Horan, and then June, we have Angela Jane.
And we know Angela Jane, head of ITV2 channel, ITV2, one of the ITV channels, but she's amazing.
No more, not anymore. Isn't she the head of ITV Studios now?
Excuse me. So even better, do you know what I mean? So she'll be able to share a lot of insight and use these sessions to really kind of dig down and ask people to be vulnerable and really share, you know what I mean? And any questions that you can send in advance would be absolutely amazing as well, so we can I can start framing. But I really want to hand the floor over. I'm not going to do a lot of talking. I really want to hand the floor over to you guys and give you the opportunity to ask questions. And just one thought on the industry talks, just to be said, is that we definitely decided we should do them because you guys were asking for it. But also some of these people, like Ben, there was about 7, 8 of you asking for him to mentor, and it would just be too unfair for us to contact Ben and say, can you make a choice? So we thought it'd be easier and better to invite them in his talks, and they're really excited and really flattered to be joining us. So, and if anyone's spoken to Ben, you know how candid and upfront and straight. So it'd be a nice direct conversation. I do enjoy Ben; he's very funny. So yeah, Friday should be good. Anyway, no further. Let's jump right in. We've got a great session. We've got Remy with us today. I wanted to kind of talk to you about why we're doing this session and why I thought this session was important. Yeah, I've been working with Remy. Remy's been coaching. Remy's actually my coach, and I met him. I think it was late last year. No, the year before possibly. I'm losing track because we had a funny year, didn't we? So it would have been the beginning of 2019. Remy, is that right? 2019.
It was the very beginning of 2020.
Very, very beginning of 2020. And to be fair, I'd had a really rough year. 2019 was pretty crap. 2018 was really crap. And 2019, I was recovering. So I'd lost my father in 2018 and my whole world was a little bit upside down. And I was at that point where I needed something, because you know, when things just feel stuck. And if I don't have something, some kind of new energy, what the hell am I doing? What is the TV Collective? What's its purpose? What's its point? It's not feeding me. I can't feed my kids. Or really, really, really crap place. And really having the opportunity to speak to Remy and kind of work through that was really amazing and helped give me fresh eyes and a new insight and a new energy about how I attack the TV Collective. So for me, today we're going to work with 3 different distinctions. The difference between being committed and attached. So one of the dramas I used to have when I'm working with TV Collective, that I would pitch a project, and I would put all my heart and my soul, everything, all of my everything into this project. I would pitch it and someone says no. And it was like they said no to me, like I'm a bad person, like something's wrong with me. Like what is earth is wrong with me? And I would take it personally. And it would mash me up. It would KO me for about 2 weeks where I'm not productive and I'm not functioning and my work is dropping off, and then have to build the energy to go again. And understanding actually that no isn't about you. It's just, don't be so emotionally attached to your stuff. So I thought that that was a really important distinction for us to kind of explore and discuss today. Also, that thing between responsibility and blame. Sometimes the understanding of taking responsibility for what's going on, but not having to get dwelling in blame and why you're wrong and who's wrong, because it kind of takes away from what needs to be done. So when you're responsible and you know what needs to be done, the action needs to be taken. It's such a positive place to be. So I thought that that was another thing that we should be discussing, and also the distinction between enrolling and selling. And anybody who's done Landmark will kind of know and understand this. I don't know if any Landmark Forum people are out there, but also this idea that when you kind of like, sometimes we rock up and we've got an idea and we're trying to pitch and we're trying to sell. If any of you guys have been into a car showroom or anywhere where someone's trying to sell, it's just really off-putting. But actually, when you enroll people and you get them to really invest and want to be part of the project and really own the project and really want to build the project, it's a whole different energy. And actually you find in that space, you are able to really have some creative conversations and actually get a lot more what you want, rather than this kind of hard selling technique. So those are the kind of 3 distinctions that we're gonna kind of go through today. Before we get started, I want you to share with you, and I think that for me, one of the things about this safe space, it has to be a safe space where we can be really vulnerable. And I guess for you guys to be vulnerable, I have to be vulnerable with you to a level. And Remy's asked me to share something when I felt less than good in my childhood, and I'm not really feeling it. I'm not really enjoying this moment, but I'm going to do it because I understand how important it is that we should just kind of, it's that thing where you felt like you weren't good enough. And then as a result, you start rocking up and you're like, well, I'm more than better. I'm better than everybody. And you don't really move as your authentic self. So I think for me, and it's quite silly, it's a brief story, really silly. I used to do ballet. And I really wanted to be a dancer when I was little. Like I really thought I was quite good at it and wanted to be a dancer. And my mum used to take me to this ballet school, and she used to drop me, I was about 6 or 7, she'd drop me at the door and I'd go in and I'd totter in. And every time I'd go in there and I would stand up, the woman would say, my bottom sticks out too much. And I'm a skinny black girl and I have not got no back half, but she would tell me my bottom sticks out too much and I look like a duck, and just keep, your lips are too big and your hair's too, and just be on at me constantly about how ugly I was, how I was never going to fit in. And I was the only little black girl there, and I would never be able to do any of the main dances. And that feeling of just feeling like absolute crap, and kind of going on to different spaces. And I went to my mum's a clown, randomly. My mum is one of the only British black clown, female clown, and she's a member of the Magic Circle, very randomly. So we used to do be in a lot of spaces and kind of do a lot of drama classes and stuff like that. And that sense of constantly not feeling that you're ever going to fit in, or that you're too ugly, or you never. And then within that, kind of wanting to say, you know what, F you guys, I am going to be more than that. And your mum in your ear telling you that you've got to be better and more than and more than and more than and more than. And it kind of then makes sure that you kind of rock up in a space where sometimes you've got your battle armor on. You don't really need it, but you're coming into war because you're not having it, because I don't want to hear your rubbish. And sometimes that can get in the way of relating and enrolling people. So just lastly, the one last thing I want to share is that when I first started in TV, I worked at the BBC, and a very senior black lady took me aside to give me some lovely advice about me making it in the industry. And she told me I was too black and that I needed to tone my blackness down. No, but this was sister to sister advice. Now, this wasn't coming from a negative place. This was coming from a place of love. Like, I can see you're struggling and I'm going to tell you how to get through. So you need to tone your blackness down. You need to kind of make sure you assimilate. The whole Caribbean food on a Friday thing can't really work. Do you know what I mean? The head wraps that you're coming into work with, it's not happening. So just that idea, again, being in a space where you thought, when I started the BBC, I naively thought it was a really creative space. And actually the idea that I was different and had all these different perspectives would be really valued, because then we could throw that into a mixing pot and then all these different perspectives, some magic happens. But learning very fast that I wasn't the carbon cutter. I wasn't a better black. I was kind of working class. I'm kind of, loud, a little ghetto, and trying to navigate that space again at times made me feel like, you know what? I'm gonna have to work harder and be better, and all of that drama that comes with that just constantly wears down. Does anybody in here relate? Does anybody, is that a, okay, Jasmine?
Oh,
Yeah, Jasmine, tell me a little bit. Tell me from your experience what's that feels like for you.
I think it's just something we're all used to, isn't it? You're in a workspace and culturally you turn up as your identity, whether that's cultural, religious, the way you speak, your language, your fashion, the way you do things. It might be the things you eat. It might be the things you discuss. It might be the movies you watch, but people are judging at every level. And there's a whole sense of wanting to fit in and be like everybody else and feeling like your tastes are not good enough, whether that's, you know, self-identity, the groups that you move with, the music you listen to, even in conversations around, you know, especially in the screen industries, there's so much hierarchical, how can I put it politely? You know, the things that you consume, everyone's very judgmental about them. So yeah, it's a sense of fitting in, but actually I think we're moving towards a time now when actually you can talk about the things that you consume and everyone else says, actually, I'd never seen it like that. It's just about having the confidence to say, this is who I am, take me as I come. And actually, once you are vulnerable to that and people see that, they tend to actually be quite up for it. You know, you often hear people saying, oh, I never considered that point of view and you've made me think differently.
Because most of it's in our own head. Because once you stand up, because one of the things for me was like the idea that I need to be somebody different. I don't even know how I'm trying to struggle with how to be me. So I ain't got no time to try and be anybody else. So that idea was saying that I'm not going to fit in because this is who I've got to be. And understanding, and when you get to that place that this is who I am, people really love it and enjoy it and think you're amazing. And when you shine, it gives them permission to shine as well. Is there anybody else? I saw quite a few hands go up. Is there anybody else you can really kind of relate with that idea of, you know, just feeling kind of less than or not quite fitting in and having to kind of really overcompensate in some other area? Does anybody else relate to that?
Fatima, you said yes.
Yeah, Fatima, share with us a little bit.
Hi guys. Sorry, I've got my son in the back, so it might be a bit noisy here. Absolutely, I think always feeling like the other is a constant feeling I think I've always had in the industry. I'd say more so when I was probably in my 20s, where you're probably trying to discover who you really are and what you're about. And you kind of think, should I adapt or will I always feel like this? But when you do start to be more of your authentic self, I think things kind of go in your way, I guess, like me working in development and talking to commissioners about what I'm watching or where I've been out on the weekend or who I'm talking to, then it just brings really kind of intriguing questions and conversations, I think. Yeah, I think initially I would say for me, I would always feel like an outsider, but now I think probably with age, I feel a bit more confident with that as well, I would say.
And I think there's a shift in time, that there is a real movement for us to bring our authentic self. Do you know what I mean? There's a real conversation about what's authentic selves and bringing authentic self. And at the time when I was getting that advice, that was many moons ago, where it was about assimilating and fitting in. And we're at the kind of cusp where we can give the next generation coming up behind us the permission to be themselves. But we have to lead by example, right? By rocking up in our best self.
Absolutely, yeah. And I would say even working in development, I know the best ideas come from everyone and people that are doing different things and watching different things and reading different books and talking to different people. You know, if everyone's going to constantly consume the same stuff, then we're all going to come up with the same ideas. So
really, absolutely. Yeah. So does anybody else kind of feel that they have to, they at times feel they overcompensate because sometimes, you know, down in their deep of their belly, they don't feel like they're quite deep? Yeah.
Yeah, I was at a head of development at the company for a long time, for about 8 years. And whilst I was there, I was the only woman with children the entire time I was there. So talking about having children or being the person that needs to leave to do something because I have a family, it made me feel like I was very separate from other people. And even recently, I went for an interview with a broadcaster and someone who was working there advised me, don't mention you've got children in the interview because it's going to go against you if you do that. So the fact that it's still there at that level is concerning, and it shouldn't have to be like that.
And how do we change it if we're not the change, right? How do we change it? Do you know what I mean? I'm going to go for one more, and then I'm going to kind of ask, I'm going to go kind of hand over to, Remy, and just kind of ask you, just your experiences of coaching different people. Is this a thing? Is this what we're talking about? Is it particular to people of colour, or is it just the thing about people, do you think?
No, I think it's also about, it's not just about, definitely about race, for sure, that comes up, but it's also about, Simone, you're looking to see who's talking, aren't you?
I can hear your voice. I'm not a voice. I know the voice.
Look for Jay's face. Look for Jay's face and you'll see the mouth moving.
I found it.
Thank you. So yeah, I think it's, yes, definitely race plays a part, but equally class as well. If you're in a place, I mean, first of all, I kind of chose places to work which matched my likes and loves. So I worked in the music industry for a long time before I came to broadcasting. When I did come to broadcast, I worked in radio, and I worked for a radio station that just catered to my tastes, if you like. So I worked at One Extra, and working there, everyone was quite unquote the same in terms of cultural background and musical taste. But when I moved into broadcast, it was such a culture shock, because one minute I was sitting in One Extra and the next minute I was on the 6th floor at Television Centre with all the commissioners and all the schedulers and all these TV executives. And I remember thinking that I was going to be my authentic self. And I came in one day with a black beret, dressed all in black with some kind of revolutionary Rastafari t-shirt on. I think I freaked everybody out and probably cost me a couple of promotions. Then you think, okay, maybe I need to tone it down. But that's the thing, you have to tone yourself down to fit. But then when you fit, you then are not your authentic self. And then but you're expected to be that voice in the room. You know, when any black questions come up or black cultural questions come up, they're looking to you to answer them, but they don't want you to look or sound like it. They just want you to answer those questions that they can't answer, but kind of assimilate with them as well. It's tiring. It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. Don't do that anymore, though.
No, do we recognize that most of us in the room kind of recognize that sense of what Jay's, I think that we all, I think we all kind of had a sense of it, even if we're not feeling it now, as we kind of grow in our careers and in age, that we, you're able to deal with that a little bit better. But I think sometimes it still lingers in the background. Remy, like I was asking, do you think that this is a thing that's particular to people of color, or is this just the thing with the people? You've coached loads of different people from different backgrounds. So, in your experience, what's this?
So this is a human thing. This is about being human. The story that you told about being a little girl and having someone older say, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, is something which each one of us has experienced. And look, I grew up Jewish and gay with foreign parents in Cambridge in the 80s, in the 70s, which was very white, very different from me. And so I felt different, I felt other. But my story about not feeling good enough, like yours and like most people's, was at about the age of 6, my dad made me rewrite the same letter to my cousins over and over again. And up until that moment, everything I'd done, every little potato print, every little essay had been, 5 gold stars, well done, perfect. And my dad kind of, took the paper and gave it back to me and made me rewrite it with spelling corrections. And then once I'd done that, he took it back and made me rewrite it again with handwriting corrections. And in that moment at the kitchen table in my parents' house, I made up a story that my dad thought I wasn't good enough. And of course, on some level, I probably internalized it around, it's because I'm gay, because I didn't even really know what that was, but I knew I wasn't like him. I knew I didn't want to marry a woman somehow, even as early as that, I think. But in any case, what I definitely felt was I'm not good enough for my dad. And so when that happens to us as a little child, like it did with you, it's too terrible to process. And so what we do as human beings is we create armor, as you described it, to protect ourselves. So my armor was, I'll be better than everyone else. I won't tell them that I'm being better than everyone else. So I'll do it in a sneaky way, but I couldn't deal with the possibility that I wasn't good enough. So I created an armor that I'll be better than everyone. And what people do, that's just what people do. So if you meet a supermodel, inside every supermodel is you ugly little girl. Inside every high court judge is you stupid little boy or girl. So we create the armor that is best suited to protect us from what we think is too terrible. And as children, it makes sense, but it just doesn't really serve us in later life. And what's interesting about some of the stories is that we always think that it's unique to us, right? But whoever you're with, no matter how important they are, I promise you that they also feel not good enough, and that they also are acting out whatever it is they need to protect themselves from. So if you see someone who's acting like they're very clever, very knowledgeable, very smart, they're protecting themselves from, I'm not smart enough. If you see someone who's acting super confident, they're protecting themselves from, I'm not good enough. And when we hide it, we miss an opportunity for connection, because what people who are truly confident in themselves do is they share vulnerably. They say, oh, you know, I've come to this interview and I'm feeling a little scared. I'm feeling a little bit nervous because you're someone who I admire and I've always wanted to meet you. That's what you would do if you were really confident. And bizarrely, it seems like what you wouldn't do if you were confident, but it actually is. So I think what many of us do when we're in stressful situations is we do what we think the most confident person would do in that situation. And I think you described it as, you know, being all that and putting on an act of, I'm better than, I'm sorted. Because that's what we think really supremely confident people would do if they were anxious, if they were nervous, if they felt judged. But the reality is they do the opposite. They actually show their vulnerability and don't act in that way. So I guess that's one of the distinctions we're gonna talk about today.
I'm talking with no mic on. So I mean, like, what can we do about it? How do we kind of get out of the space of it's all about me and what's going on? Would it be a good idea for us to kind of break into rooms? And maybe, because when I'm also conscious that there's so many people in the room that they also haven't had an opportunity to talk to each other as well. So is there something we're doing?
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk a little about that first thing, and then maybe we can break into rooms right after. So
yeah.
So know that we're all going to go into rooms shortly. But just to answer your question about what do we do about that? And you said, what do we do about not making it all about us? And that's really the first thing that you do is you shine the spotlight on the other person. So like everyone's going to be meeting their mentors. It's a good example to kind of start with. There's two ways of being in an interview. One is the way that most of us tend to be. We make it be that it's all about us, right? That the spotlight is on me, that I need to shine, I need to impress you. I need you to think that I'm smart and knowledgeable, and that you're going to judge me based on what you think of me. Can I just ask if that's what most of us think when we're in an interview situation? Most of us think the spotlight's on me. I'm being judged for how smart or knowledgeable or experienced or capable I am. Can we maybe just turn your mics on and just let me know what you think, because it's really weird in this silence.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah.
But that's what we're invited to do, is to show people, because they ask you questions and they say, and we're invited to be smart and to be bright.
Yeah, and that is kind of our job in those interviews to impress the other person with us, which kind of plays to that whole thing we were talking about the armor. So the armor comes out because we feel the spotlight's on me, so I don't really feel good enough for a spotlight to be on me. I don't really feel that smart. I don't really feel that accomplished, but I have to pretend to be that because the spotlight's on me, and that's what I think you want, right? So I pretty much get the consensus that everyone kind of relates to that in some way and understands that. Well, if you look at it a slightly different way, which is that usually in an interview, the only reason you're there is because they know what you've done, they've seen your CV, they recognize you are accomplished, and they think you could do the job. So they're not really testing the things that you think they are. You think that your job in an interview is to impress, but they already are impressed enough to have invited you to the interview. I mean, let's use the example of your mentor, right? You might think when you meet your mentor for the first time that your job is to impress them with what you've accomplished, what you've done, what you've achieved, how bright you are, how capable you are. And it's fine if you think that, but you're wrong, because they've already said yes to being your mentor. So they don't need to be impressed by you. When someone calls you in for an interview, in most situations, what they're really testing is, how does this person make me feel about myself when I'm with them? What they're really trying to see is, how will this person make the team feel about each of themselves if I hire them? If I hire this person, will it create a stronger team or a weaker team? Now, if this person is an egomaniac, if this person is consumed by themselves, if this person seems arrogant or better than, they probably won't be the contribution to the team that I would like them to be. However, if this person who is in front of me leads me, the interviewer, feeling excited, interested in myself, seen, heard, appreciated, recognized, powerful, then I, the interviewer, will think, well, when can you start? When can you start? Because I would love to have someone like that on my team. And I know that everyone on my team would love to have someone like that on the team too. And if this person made me feel so great about myself in the space of 30 minutes, how great will they make me feel? How great will they make my colleagues feel? So it's an entire shift from how we normally see these things. Instead of it being a chance for you to shine, it's a chance for you to put the spotlight on the other person. When you meet somebody who is entitled, you'll notice that one of the first things they do is comment on you. It's such an honor to meet you. What a beautiful office you have. I feel so lucky to be chosen to come to this interview. It's what they do because it comes from a place of confidence and strength. And it's what I want to encourage you to do when you do what is the best practice in these situations, which is channel the most confident person you know. Channel that person. Because I bet if you think about the most confident person you know, that's what they do. They shine the light on you. The most confident person doesn't think, oh, the spotlight's on me, now I need to talk for half an hour. I know it's a slightly weird thing to be saying when I'm talking to you for half an hour. But generally, it's good to ask questions. It's good to tease out from the other person who they are, to show them that you recognize them. And one way to kind of explain this shift is to say, most of us go to interviews trying to show the other person how lucky they would be to have us. Everyone pretty much echoed that feeling. How about instead of doing that, we showed the other person how lucky we would feel to be chosen by them. How lucky I would feel if you chose me. Because here's the thing, when I'm showing you how lucky you would be to have me, I'm just talking about myself. There's nothing else I can do. If I'm trying to show you how lucky you would be to have me, I'm just talking about my experience, my skills, my abilities. And it's really boring listening to someone else talk about themselves. If, on the other hand, I'm trying to show you how lucky I would feel to be chosen by you, then I'm talking about you. I'm telling you why I would feel so lucky to work for a person who has done what you have done, who has built an organization like the TV Collective in the short time that you built it and created the kind of projects that you created. I would feel lucky to work for someone who has created a program like Breakthrough Leaders. And suddenly I'm talking about you. And of course, you're interested in you because you are you. That's the thing about being human. So when you're trying to convince the other person how lucky you would feel to be chosen by them, you end up showing them what you know about them, how you followed their career, how you followed their credits, their trajectory, how you actually see them. And this is the part we're leading to at the breakout rooms. When we feel seen by somebody, when we feel appreciated by them, when we feel recognized by them, something magic happens. So if you imagine yourself being on the other side of the interview process, and I'm sure many of you have been in the place of the interviewer, you don't necessarily choose the person with the best credits or the most relevant experience. Of course they have relevant experience, of course their credits are good, but the chemistry, the magic, the alchemy that occurs, the reason why you pick them is because you liked being yourself with them. And you like being yourself with them because they saw you, they recognized you. Not just based on having read your LinkedIn profile, but a deeper knowledge of who you are and what you've done. Maybe they connected with your values or your life purpose or something that you'd done that was hidden that other people didn't know about, but they actually saw you. And that's who we would like to work with, right? We don't want to have necessarily people who just admire us, God forbid people who don't, but what we really want is people around us who we can be ourselves with. And the thing is, all of you have said that when you were sharing about bringing your authentic self to work, for instance, but the same is true for the person on the other side of the interview table, no matter what their gender, sexuality, class, race, any of that. Because as human beings, we want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be recognized, we want to be appreciated. And so if you think of yourself as a mirror, that's what you're doing. You're mirroring back the other person in a way that they like to be mirrored. Because if you've ever had a mirror in your house or someone else's house that reflects you back in a way that is better than you thought you looked, you don't ever say, oh, where does that mirror come from? Is it from China? Is it a knockoff? Is it some cheap imitation? I don't want that mirror. You just go, oh, amazing. What an amazing mirror. On the other hand, if the mirror reflects you back in a way that you don't relate to, that you feel isn't quite you or doesn't really live up to how you'd like to be seen, then you just throw the mirror on the skip, right? Doesn't matter if you just don't want that mirror around. So in any situation where there's two people, mirroring is really important. And I really encourage you to research the person who's meeting you in a way that is a little bit more forensic than you would otherwise have done, and connect with their story, not as the list of their achievements or credits, but who they are, where they've come from. Because, we all know that when people do that, we feel connected. And if we feel it, they do too. Like for me, if somebody knows about my background and my childhood and my journey and connects with me on that level because they relate somehow, not necessarily because they share the same story, but because they share a sense of the same story, I already feel an affinity. Whereas if someone just connects with me on the level of what I've done or published, then I feel like, well, only the surface of me has been seen. So it's really about recognizing the idea that we may feel different and other because of our experience, but so do people who we wouldn't imagine would feel different. Everybody has that stupid little boy or that ugly little girl inside them, and everyone on a human level just wants to be seen and appreciated. So the next thing we're going to do.
Remy, I think Ashok, do you still have a question?
Yeah, please, anytime anyone has questions. Please.
Yeah, just to be, you could argue just to be devil's advocate in that's why people of a certain class, certain backgrounds, certain experiences can better mirror each other, and that's what keeps other people out.
Yes, but that is true. But don't focus just on the surface of it, because you're absolutely right. Diverse leaders build diverse teams, and similarly the reverse is true. What we're drawn to is people who seem like us, but I think that exists on a much deeper level as well. So on a surface level, of course you're right. If someone went to the same school or the same college or the same university or has similar friends, or of course that creates a bond. But there's another bond which comes from being uniquely seen and appreciated and recognized. And it comes from actually honoring who the other person is and giving them space to be themselves. And we can all do that. But when we feel like, maybe to play into what you're saying, when we feel like I don't have any common interests with you, I don't have any common experiences with you, I don't have any common surface experiences with you, then I don't share what really counts, which is what's under the surface, which is my humanity. Because I think we all can recognize as human beings that Simone's childhood story of wanting to be a dancer and having been the daughter of Britain's first Black female clown, something I didn't even know about her. If she shared vulnerably that story, that makes me feel closer. Now, none of my parents were clowns or Black, but I feel a connection because she shared vulnerably. And she might not share vulnerably if she felt like I need to seem more like him or fit in better or be better than. Does that start to make sense?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I'm just because you started talking about interviews and so on, and oftentimes when we go into an interview, we don't really know a great deal about these people, and what you can research about somebody is probably on that level of they were at this university or they live in Highbury, and or whatever it is. You can find out. So the deeper level stuff that you're talking about emerges over time. So that's one thing. I do hear what you say about.
Well, these days, people really, you really can research, and often when people care about something, it might be a charity or a project or a mission that they're on. There is a sign of it there. It doesn't take much digging, and when you just connect with them on the level of what is important to them, which is often not necessarily exactly what they're doing at work, but something that you noticed about them, that it just creates a bond because they feel seen. They feel seen, and somehow it touches. When you touch someone's heart and you create a connection and makes them feel warm, it transcends a lot of stuff. And that's just what I'm encouraging you to do. Does anyone else have something that at this point they'd like to ask or say? Because please do. It's such a useful, everyone's input is so useful, because whatever one person feels, 20 people also feel as well.
There's definitely a book that's helped me with that, Remy, and that's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it always talks about these very same principles about finding common ground and understanding that most people want to hear about themselves, and that kind of interest that you have in other people is really enrolling. It's really enrolling for someone to hear that you have similar interests, and it doesn't matter what it is. I can guarantee I could find common ground with pretty much everyone I speak to, if I wanted to. Do you know what I mean? And I think that it just takes a little bit of thought. And yes, it can be hard. And I'm thinking about that in terms of speaking to a mentor, even about how in the initial conversation, how you can find those common grounds, such that it gives you something to talk about in the very early days. So it's not just that really kind of stale, sterile environment, that it's conversational and
absolutely.
Yeah.
But sharing vulnerably who you are with your mentor, no matter how different they may seem, no matter how perfect they may seem,
will touch them, right?
Well, you owe it to yourself, because it makes you human, and we connect on a human level because we are human. And I think often when we come from a place of difference, we feel like it's our difference that defines us, and we can't afford to let it do that. We have to share as much as we can who we really are and what our pain is, what our fear is, in order to have there be a chance of connection. I
agree, actually. Can I just say something? I think I found that when I guess like many people, you walk around with this shell around you and you talk from inside of that shell to kind of protect yourself, kind of thing. But I found that I get more connection with people when I am vulnerable. When I become vulnerable and talk about my truth, that's when I get the most interaction. So an example would be that I lost my mother last year. And so most of the time I'm just fine and I'm okay. And when anyone asks me, I'm all right, I'm doing fine. And I remember and I don't really share personal stuff on Facebook, generally speaking, but I remember when it was my mum's birthday in December, and it was her first birthday without her. And it was really just the hardest day ever, apart from the actual day when she passed. and actually putting on Facebook, look, I wasn't, you know, I'm just a broken mess. It's a broken mess kind of day, you know, and I'm just trying to make it through. And the amount of response I got from people, because I was literally talking about what I was going through that day, and the response I got back was bigger than any other response that I get about any other post. And I think it's because everybody can relate to just not being okay today, you know, and it being all right that you're not okay.
And that plays into the point that someone just made, which is, you know, you may not have gone to the same school or have the same college or got the same friends, but everyone has a mother, and everyone either lost their mother or fears losing their mother. So the moment any human stuff like that comes up, it just transcends everything and it creates a bond.
Right.
No one's thinking your mother's brown and my mother's black. It's just not an issue. It's really not. It becomes about how I would feel if I lost my mother, or I lost my mother and I feel that way. So really important big things like fear and loss and joy, by the way, really transcend those things that create difference. So we just created a little exercise, which is part of helping to get everyone to know each other better, but it's also to kind of illustrate the importance of seeing each other. And I just want you to go into pairs and just decide who's going to be A and who's going to be B. And A will tell B who you are. Okay, A will tell B who you are, what the breakthrough is you hope to have in the coming year, how you know you'll have had it, i.e. the milestones, and then why that matters to you. Okay, so A will tell B who they are, what the breakthrough is they hope to have, how they know they'll have it, and why it matters. And talk for about 2 minutes. I think Rio will come in at 2 minutes and say you've had 2 minutes roughly. B, your job is just to listen and hear. And then when A is finished, B will feed back to A what they said in a very précis form, i.e. the bullets, the facts that you heard, and who you feel A is. So something about them as a person, something about them as a leader. So, you know, it can go quite deep, and don't be afraid to just share it. You know, someone may be sharing with you about their year and why it matters to them, and you may be getting a really strong sense that they're a very kind person or a very generous person or a very sharing person. Tell them that, and then you swap. So what it's about is just being in a one-on-one situation where you're hearing, mirroring back, and then providing some insight that shows you have listened underneath the words to who they're being in front of you, who the person is in front of you. And when you've both done that, so A has shared, B has shared, A has fed back, B has fed back, I want you each to give each other a mark for how heard and seen you felt. So by the other person, and be honest, because this is all about learning. Like, you know, if the person who's reflecting back to you didn't quite get what you were saying and didn't quite see you, then don't say you've got a 10 out of 10, but give them a mark that reflects how seen and how heard you felt. Does anyone have any questions on that before Rio throws us into break rooms? Brilliant. So Rio will put us into break rooms, and then we'll come back in about 10 minutes.
I was going to stay into it.
Stuff in the middle.
Wow, we got dragged back halfway.
Halfway through conversations, just as we get into it. Gosh, that was quick. Oh, sorry, Fatima.
We talked about everything, but we didn't get a chance to give each other marks out of 10, I don't think.
Well, you can do it now. What would be really great now would be just to have 3 or 4 pairs just share what they got from it, how it was, anything, really anything.
Can I go?
Yep.
Oh, so I just met lovely Michael Jenkins, who, when we immediately had a connection because I could tell from his broad Bristolian accent where he was from. And I lived in Bristol for 9 years. And in fact, he's renting the office from the people who started the pirate radio station I worked on in Bristol many, many moons ago. So immediately I had this brilliant connection, and we're able to sort of, start with that about Bristol and what it was like. And that was just really wonderful. And then we kind of went on and to discover that Michael, had been an independent filmmaker, and kind of found that, the voices from the local communities weren't really being told in the mainstream. And he's, hadn't sort of taken any of the traditional routes, but decided to go from music onto YouTube and sort of channel his work there. And his ambition with his colleague is to, get his first commission and then be a place where other people from minority or people who, really don't have the opportunity can come and develop a career and work with his team. And he was lovely. He was really nice.
And what did you hear about him under the surface? What did you feel about him?
That he really cared. That he was kind of battling on despite the sort of discouraging scene that he'd seen around him, and that he felt he could make a difference, and that he was actually feeling really positive about moving forward in a climate where now diversity is being, celebrated and welcomed.
Brilliant. And Michael, did you feel heard by Navdeep?
Oh yeah, definitely, especially after Navdeep just said all that. I mean, yeah, definitely felt heard. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so what was the experience like of that for you?
For me, listening to Navdeep say that back to me, I mean, yeah, I think she definitely got exactly what I was saying, and got a gist of my journey and where I want to be. And and we're quite, just listening to Navdeep's story, we're quite similar as far as what we want to try and achieve, as far as getting our first commissions with a sort of mainstream broadcaster, and telling those stories that, of communities that have been historically just haven't been represented. And listening to Navdeep, I was just surprised that I was in the presence of the first, Asian correspondent for the BBC in foreign correspondent in India, and I thought that was so that's quite an important hallmark, moment, and I think it speaks a lot to what Navdeep was saying as far as where her passions lie, and the fact that she was just being in Delhi, being that well-known face, and how it felt, when her father saw her in that place as well. And I just felt that, under the surface, I just felt a real sort of authenticity from Navdeep. That's what I felt coming through.
To me, it only seemed like you were gone for a matter of minutes, but Navdeep told you how her father felt when she was on TV in India. And that's what I'm talking about, okay? That's what I'm talking about. Sharing with people in a very short space of time, things that really matter, that speak about who we are as human beings, beyond all the labels. She has a father, I have a father, you have a father. We would want our fathers to be proud of us if we did something amazing. And Navdeep shared with you that her father was. So brilliant. Thank you for that. Who else has a story of how it was for them when someone mirrored them, shared with them, heard them, listened to them? Just jump in.
I was paired with Steve Allen, and I was just really quite astonished by in that short period of time. We didn't get into real particulars, but it was more of our struggles with our sort of internal struggles that we spoke about. And so actually listening to him, even though in the beginning I didn't even really know what he did, what became very clear was that, like most of us, he sort of had that imposter syndrome and just needed to sort of sit back and really, I guess, enjoy the position that he's got to. And so again, it was quite interesting. He did the same thing with me when he talked to me about what he heard from me. He managed to put into words with things that I couldn't clarify myself. So I was actually really surprised. It was really quite incredible.
Well,
like 2 minutes.
Well, that sounds like a 10 out of 10. When somebody reflects back to you things that you couldn't put into words yourself, that creates a real connection. That feels really seen and heard when somebody articulates something about me that I couldn't quite put into words myself, right?
Yeah, it was quite surprising.
Would your partner like to chime in? I can't find you, but if you talk, I'll find you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. I think it was a really I would sort of reciprocate in the same way that there was things that when you speak to somebody else, it helps you sort of distill what your feelings are. What I did was I sort of tried to do what you suggested, which was to listen a little bit below the sort of the statements and try and think about what those statements actually mean. And so yeah, and again, had a connection, and I had a light bulb moment as well, in terms of trying to distill, because I was still trying to go through the process of distilling the letter to myself and what it really means and what I'm trying to achieve, and it's changed on a regular basis.
Excellent. What did you hear under the surface of what she was saying?
I felt that she felt a little bit undervalued, and that she was confident and had talent, but it maybe wasn't recognised, and that she would like more responsibility. Wonderful.
Who else wants to share quickly? We've got a couple more shares would be great.
Can I share quickly? Can I just really quickly share? I went with Samira, and actually there's a reason why I'm doing this, and I know Samira will understand why I'm doing this as well. But Samira spoke and was sharing just about where she's actually got a really brilliant new job, slight different space from where she was before, really new opportunities, but not still finding her feet within that, and seems to have a bit of a minute where she's not feeling so sure about her abilities and her comfortabilities. And what was quite alarming to me, I'll just do a quick share. Yesterday, I was texting around people and asking people to send quotes in and stuff like that. And I text Samira, and one of the things Samira doesn't like doing is she doesn't like doing pictures. She doesn't like being in the public space. She doesn't like being up in front. So the fact that I would have asked her to do something that was out of her comfort zone without knowing that was really interesting. And the other thing for me, which was quite fascinating, is that she reflects a lot back like how I am. I don't like being in front. I don't like being on camera. So it was quite funny as I'm sitting down listening to her, thinking, I feel exactly the same bloody way, but I'm not going to tell you. So that was amazing. But the main thing for me, which really stood out for me, is that there was a certain amount of brilliance and a shine, and this kind of fear, like, it's like almost too scared to shine too bright. It's like this real amazingness that is bubbling and just being really stifled and stifling herself, not allowing herself to shine so bright. And that really came across, because she came across really capable and able and passionate and loved the industry when she kind of settled down and warmed up. But it just felt like it's not because you're scared because you can't do, it's more that you're scared that you can, that you're quite amazing. Do you know what I mean? And that's what kind of came across to me.
Wow.
Resonates in any way.
A couple more shares. I mean, just one more pair. Jump in.
I had Kulvinder, who was really good. And I felt like she really listened to me, and I really felt seen, and I really felt heard. When I spoke about my breakthroughs, that I wanted to have, more of my ideas commissioned, she was very sort of receptive to that, and I just felt like she really got me.
Brilliant. And where is your pairing in that? Where's
I'm here. I didn't get a chance to talk about my breakthroughs, but I did just really try and listen and try to sort of understand why she did the sort of moves that she did throughout her life, and the decisions that she made. And I kind of understood her as a person and what drove her, so I just felt that sort of passion, and also just felt her sort of authentic self. So yeah.
Brilliant. So there's two people who just joined while you were in the breakout rooms, Naz and somebody else. Who else joined? Rio? Or maybe it was just Naz.
Patrice joined as well.
Brilliant. Hi. So I said to Naz, and I'm just saying to Patrice, that when we came out of the breakout rooms, a couple of people would just tell you what we've been doing up till now and just give you a little synopsis of the first hour. So please, would somebody volunteer just to give a quick synopsis to Patrice and to Naz on what the distinctions are that we've covered and where we're up to. It will make me feel seen and heard. Come on, someone, just chime in.
Okay, I'll try. I'll give it a go. So the
who is that?
Ashok. Hello.
Brilliant. I'm trying to spotlight you.
Okay, so Remy's been talking about turning it on its head when you're going in to talk to people. Instead of trying to impress people with who you are in when you try to say how brilliant you are when you're going for an interview. It's about reflecting. All of us have the little quiet person inside that's shy, that's afraid, that's fearful, that feels stupid and feels they don't have what it takes. And it's mirroring, it's finding common ground, and it's mirroring back to the other person, that and the importance of making a connection and making a bond with that other person. Showing your vulnerability and shedding your armor is what it's about. So this exercise that we just did in pairs was that we spoke about our breakthrough, why it matters to us, and who we were. And the other person was going to reflect back what they'd heard and mirror back to them what they'd heard that was underneath, as well as the surface, but something underneath, and how much of that connection was there.
Brilliant, really brilliant. Thank you so much. I do feel very seen and heard by you, so thank you for that.
Thank you. I feel very seen and heard that you've said that too, Remy.
Well, it's interesting how it works, and I mean, there was a commonality in everybody's experience of being in the breakout rooms, which was quite amazing. That in 4 minutes we share vulnerably something about ourselves, and the other person sees it and lets us know we've seen it. There is a connection. It creates a connection. And you know, if you want to come away saying that connection existed because we are all people of color, then say that, but that's not the case. It's not about that. It's about being human with someone else and just daring to do that and being courageous about that. Because in any meeting where you are a mirror, you get to the core of humanity, the core of that person's humanity, and share the core of your humanity in a way that doesn't happen when you're trying to be perfect or strong or better than. We were talking about this in an interview situation, but like if you go into a crowded room, how do you think you would know who the most powerful person is? If you come into a room, like maybe imagine you come in at a kind of, you know, gallery level, so you're looking down and everyone's in the room below you, and maybe there's 100 people. How would you know who the most powerful person in the room is, would you say? Anybody?
Would it be the person everyone's gravitating towards? Sorry.
No, that's what I was going to say, the person sort of holding the attention of the room.
Yeah, possibly. Anyone who's done any acting knows that if you're playing the king, you never move. And generally the most powerful person in the room is the stillest person. So it's an energy that attracts. And in a way, you're both right, because it is people, it's the person who people come to. And so, you know, we were talking about how in interview situations, when we feel powerless or we feel less than or we feel spotlighted, we tend to do a lot of talking about us and how wonderful we are and everything we've achieved. And when we try and channel what would the most confident, successful person do in that interview situation, we come up with the wrong answer, because we come up with the answer, well, the most confident person in the room would project their confidence. But the most confident person would actually absorb. So all you need to do is be a mirror and reflect the other person. You don't need to impress them. You don't need to show them you're strong. You need to let them feel strong and let them feel seen. So Simone asked me to go through another distinction, which is a distinction I'm sure you are familiar enough with that we can do it quite quickly. But it's the distinction between being committed and being attached. Does anyone want to kind of chime in with how they see that distinction? Does anyone have a view on that?
I have a view, I think.
I think you do, Jay.
I think being committed to something comes from a place of passion, a place of of a real desire for that thing, for that whatever that thing you're committed to manifest. Whereas an attachment to that thing would be, you want to be attached to how it comes about, who it comes about with. Life cannot be the same if it doesn't happen. That kind of, it's very rigid, I think, attachment is, because it gives no space for creation, and it gives no space for I guess, serendipity and magic to happen. In other words, a commitment is about having a desire for an outcome, but not attached to how that outcome happens, and being very free, and also being free to see that actually it might come, you know, that the way that you think about it, think about how it will come about, might not be the way that it actually manifests, and actually you're not committed to how, but just committed to something. And it's quite a much higher, bigger, I think, distinction than the attachment. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah. No, it's beautifully said. I mean, essentially, an attached mindset is, I am this project. I am this relationship. If this project succeeds, then I succeed. I'm a success. If this project fails, then I'm a failure. And it's very common to think that, because, you know, particularly in creative industries where we identify with the output, right? If the show's a success, then I'm a successful producer. If the commissioner commissions it, then I'm a success. If the audience watches it, then I'm a success. If they don't, I'm a failure. And there are a couple of people who've been on the receiving end of a lot of pitches in development and commissioning. And I don't know if they'll agree with this, but when someone is attached, it's exhausting. There's no freedom to look at the idea, to play with the idea, to input the idea, to suggest it, because it's all about them. So you're not really talking about the idea, you're talking about them. It feels claustrophobic, it feels like a room with no air when somebody makes it all about them. And that's true in, you know, personal relationships as well. When somebody's making it all about them, you can't talk about what you'd like to have be different or anything. Like, take the simplest analogy you want. You know, if someone makes a dinner all about them, then you can't say, oh, I'd rather we didn't have fish tonight, or, you know, you just can't say anything in that space. So there ends up being no collaboration, no input, no freedom, like Jay was saying, no self-expression, no joy when someone is completely attached. So we live in this kind of misunderstanding that being attached passionately, firmly, our ego attached to the project is good. It's good for art. It's good for television and film. It's what creative people do. They attach and they make it all about them, and that's why we have successful product. But it's such a misunderstanding, because, like Jay was saying, to be committed is saying, I will do anything I can in my power to make this project work. I'll do anything in my power to make this relationship work. I really want it to, and I'm here. But being attached means I'm making it all about me. It almost is the opposite. It seems like it's the same, but supercharged. You know, I'm so attached that if it fails, I'm going to kill myself. Feels like, well, that person will do a great job, but they won't, because they can't see it. Like, has anyone got an example of a project that they have worked on or pitched where they just know that they were totally attached? They made it about them. If someone said, I love it, then it was almost like they were saying, I love you. And if someone said, I hate it, it was almost like, I hate you. Can someone think of an example? It'd be really helpful. Please. Sometime when you made something about you. We've all done it. We've all done it millions of times every day. Be brave. An idea that you had that you so wanted it to happen that you just knew that if someone said yes, you'd made it, you'd be a success. I mean, look, sometimes we do it with our company. If our company succeeds, I'm a success. If this program succeeds, if this proposal succeeds, yeah. D.
So when I was working in development a while ago, I had an idea which involved a family where 6 of the 7 siblings were all on the autistic spectrum. And I fell in love with the family when I was doing some draft filming with them. And I became very attached to the idea and shaping it in my head and how it would be. And I was pitching it to various broadcasters. And I thought, if it does go forward, it's one of those films that's just going to change the landscape on some level. And I was hugely frustrated and disappointed when none of the broadcasters took it immediately, because it just felt like I didn't feel like they understood what I wanted it to be. But obviously I wasn't thinking about what did they need for their schedule, what did they need for their channel. And so, yeah, I can definitely, that was an example from a while ago.
Brilliant. And can you see how it could have been different for you and everyone else if you had been passionately committed but not attached?
Yeah, I think when if I'd been able to sort of disassociate my emotional connection to it on some level, I'd have been able to be more objective about it, and then maybe turn the project more to make it fit with what it was the broadcaster needed.
Mm. Well, thank you for that. It's a brave share and really powerful. Because every time we're attached, there's no freedom. There's no freedom for movement, for input. So it becomes quite heavy. And when we're committed but not attached, it's quite light. It's quite light. You know, we all know when someone's asking us a question and they're attached. We know that you can't say anything. When someone's attached, you can't say anything. And they may not have even said anything, but we still know it. You know, with your partner, your friends, when they're attached, they don't want your input. They just want you to say, wonderful, let's do it. And very often we don't want to say it's wonderful, let's do it. We want to say, I'd love it if you made some changes, or I might like it more if you did it differently. So thank you so much for sharing that. Does anyone else have another story about where they were really attached and something perhaps didn't work out quite how they hoped? Adnan?
Hi, Remy.
Hi.
So I think in 2018, I made a series for the BBC about Africa. And because I'd been over there and filmed for 5 weeks, I felt incredibly attached to all of the stories that we came back with. And one of them in particular was about a refugee camp. And we'd spent 2 days filming in a refugee camp. It had taken us, a day to get there, a day to get back, a huge part of the schedule. And I was completely emotionally, physically, every part of me was involved in this story about this refugee camp in northern Kenya, which is taking in loads of refugees and doing amazing work. And pretty much immediately when we got it into the edit, the commissioner just came in and said, yeah, we're going to drop the whole refugee thing. And it really knocked me for six, and I just couldn't let it go. So I had a big meeting with, the commissioner, the exec. The editor really loved the story as well. He's a good friend of mine, and he saw it for what it was worth, and he knew how important it was to me. So we had a big meeting about it, cut it shorter, tried to make it work. Then the exec came in, sort of saying, we've tried to make this work, but I think we're just going to have to lose it because there's not enough time for it. And I think the feeling behind it, to cut the long story short, was that, there's already been too much about refugee camps, and our angle for our film needed to be going in a different direction. And so I ended up, obviously cutting it out, making the film as it was, made a really, really good film, but lost nights and nights of sleep and expended a lot of emotional energy fighting tooth and nail for this story. And that is because I was completely attached to it, rather than maybe zooming out a bit and seeing, the episode and the series from above, and seeing the commissioner and the execs and what their perspective was in terms of giving time to other stories. So,
but did you make it about you?
I made it about me, yeah, because in my mind, I was remembering how hard we worked for that story. I was physically back there, those 5-hour drives, those dusty roads, those people that we connected with while we were there, and how that had made me feel personally. So I sort of put myself into that story, and wasn't, I guess, looking at the overall sort of narrative arc of that episode and how it fitted in with the rest of the series. and how actually not putting that story in could give us space to let other stories breathe that could take us off in another direction. And I think in that instance, it did take, you know, other people to effectively pull me back and say, this is the big picture here. This whole series is bigger than that one story.
Yeah, so I think it's always useful for us to just look at, am I being committed or am I being attached? And I think it's difficult for me in your story to know whether you were simply being committed to something you believed in and wanted to see on screen, in which case giving voice to that was your commitment, or whether you were attached, i.e. if they don't put this in, then I've lost, I'm a failure. When we make it about ourselves is a sign that we're attached. But if, you know, there's nothing, we need to be committed to outcomes, otherwise nothing will happen. Your intentional self needs to decide what is important, but when it's about me, and generally you'll know how you feel in your body, right? When you feel something in your body, it's because you're attached. When you're committed, it's kind of exciting. Like Jay was saying, it's kind of an energy that's exciting. It takes you, it carries you, you're floating on that energy of commitment. But the energy of attachment drags you down, and I definitely feel it in my stomach. Okay, so I think it's important to just notice as you go out into the world and things come up, whether you're attached or whether you're committed, and just look at that, because it's not healthy for you or for projects to be attached. It's hard for other people. It's hard for you. It has a toll on your, like you said, you couldn't sleep. So maybe that you couldn't sleep could be a sign that you were attached. But it also could be that you were just very committed to showing the story of the refugees. It's a hard one. It's a hard one. I really want you to be more committed, but less attached. I just got a note from Simone saying we're running out of time. So I'm just going to cover two very quick distinctions before we all go at 5:30. One that comes right out of this, and I don't know how to get back in vision, but maybe Rio can help me. There we go. Well, no, I'm not doing very well at this. Rio, can you get me back?
I thought I spotlighted you. When
we see you.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So one that comes right out of that is being responsible but not to blame. Responsible but not to blame. So it comes out of attachment as well, I think, because sometimes we shirk responsibility because we don't want to be responsible for something, because if I'm responsible, then I'm the person you blame. However, to be a leader, you have to be responsible. I think Renee touched on this in his brilliant talk a couple of weeks ago. Being a leader is being fully responsible. It's saying the buck stops with me, but you have to be able to detach yourself from the project, the team, whatever is at stake, in order to not be to blame. Because although I am responsible, it's not my fault if something goes wrong. And that distinction is a really important distinction to master, because when I'm to blame, I'm making it about me. I'm feeling like we went over budget and I'm to blame. Whereas if I'm responsible, like we went over budget, let's talk about what happened and how to make sure it doesn't happen again and what we can do to claw back the budget in different areas. It's almost the reverse of what we were talking about before, because when I'm responsible, I'm detached. And when I'm to blame, I'm attached. Again, if anyone has a quick, well, we don't have time for quick stories, but it's an important distinction that I'd like to leave you with, because it comes up a lot when you're leading anything, because whatever you're leading, you are responsible for, but that doesn't mean it's your fault. It also doesn't mean, the opposite is when people say it's all about me when it succeeds. If a project that you're responsible for is a huge success, it's not all about you. It's about everyone involved in making it the success that it was. And I think we're quicker to see that when it comes to positive outcomes sometimes than we are with negative outcomes. So when somebody, takes all the credit for something that they led, we think that they're a real arsehole. But when they take all the blame, we think, well, they're doing the right thing. But that's wrong too. Just as you don't want to identify with failure or success if something you're doing succeeds or fails, Also, when you're leading something, you don't want to make it all about you either. So you can be fully responsible, but not get all the credit or all the blame. And by not attaching, by being detached, it allows you to look at the problem, look at the failure, look at the mistakes in a very different way. Because now you're looking at the learning that the team could have, the learning that you could have. You can forensically investigate what happened and what went wrong in a very much more kind of scientific, less emotional way. Whereas the moment your blame is involved, you feeling it clouds everything and it becomes heavy. And then no one really looks at what actually went wrong and what could be done differently and how you can learn, because they're sucked into your energy of going, oh, I'm such a failure. I'm an awful person. I blame myself. And then everyone's trying to protect you from blaming yourself rather than looking at what actually happened. So distinction between being responsible but not to blame is very, very important. And I don't think we have time for the final distinction, Simone. I'm sorry, unless we can spend 5 more minutes. I don't know where everyone is at. Simone?
I'm here. If you can, I don't know. I know some people have to push off at 5:30, but if people want to, and I know we've got a few people who want to talk about mentors and stuff who are going to stay behind. So if you've got 5 minutes, if people don't mind, I think that the distinction between enrolling and selling is extremely important. So if people don't mind, and you can explain it quite quickly, you know, I would say go for it. Well, are we okay with that, guys, or do you want to push off? Is that okay? Yeah.
I mean, in a way, we've done all the work here to understand this, and Simone kind of brilliantly headlined it with, like, if you're buying a high-ticket item, whether it's a house or a car or anything where there's quite a lot at stake, you'll know that somebody's saying to you, you're going to love this idea, and by the time I finish selling it to you, you're going to want to have it. Just is all it takes to put you off. And anyone who's ever been sold to, whether it's in a car showroom or in a real estate agent, you know that feeling of how can I leave without buying? And I think commissioners, you'll be familiar with it. When someone's selling you a finished thing, it's like, here's the idea, and they're pitching, all you're thinking of is how can I say no? Whereas if they're sharing, if they're enrolling, if the idea is kind of exists here between us in a ball, floating, rather than something I've thrown at you, then we can look at it together. It's a little bit like responsibility and blame, attachment and commitment. When I'm committed but not attached, when I'm responsible but not to blame, then we can talk about this idea with freedom and joy and lightness. You can tell me what you like, I can tell you whether it works. So it's true about ourselves. So we started talking about, like, in an interview, when you're just not trying to impress, not trying to sell, not trying to show how clever and experienced and accomplished you are, but just present, then the other person can see you like you saw each other in those breakout rooms and get a feeling of what it would actually be like to have you around. Whereas if they're saying, I'm great, you're going to want me, all they're thinking is, no, I don't. So with ideas, with projects, when you can enroll the other person in it, just by having it float between you, and if you think of the analogy of a ball floating between you rather than a ball being thrown at you, that helps, I think. But like Simone said, if you take the car showroom analogy, you know, when the used car salesman says, I'm going to come along for the test drive, and by the time you finish this test drive, boy, are you going to want the car. You're just thinking, how can I get out of the car without him taking my money? Whereas if he says, look, it's just the law, I've got to come along for the ride, but here's my card. If at the end of the test drive, once you get home, you kind of like it, give me a call. Then you can actually enroll yourself in the experience of riding the car, because you're driving along, you quite enjoy it. When you get back, you'll know, do you love the car and want to buy it or not? And nothing that guy could have said would help. In fact, anything he said would have stopped you from wanting it. And it's like that when you're pitching or selling or promoting. Just don't find a way to share, not to sell. And I sometimes like cooking analogies because it takes out of the pitching zone and out of the world of TV. And it's like, you know, if somebody says to you, I've got an amazing dish, I'm going to make you spicy prawns on the barbecue, how about that? You really only have one or two answers. Yes, I'd love that, or no, because I've told you what I'm making. Whereas if I said, oh, it's amazing, on the way here, I saw these really great jumbo prawns. Do you like prawns? You can go, oh, yes, I do. Or actually, no, I'm allergic to fish, right? And then assuming that you say, yes, I love prawns, I could say to you, well, that's great. I love prawns too. Why don't we buy the prawns? And then, I don't know, I was thinking I could maybe cook them on the barbecue. And then you could go, no, I hate barbecues. I had a terrible experience as a child. My brother got burned on the barbecue. Let's not do a barbecue. And I'll go, okay, that's fine. What would you like them grilled, maybe, or broiled? And you go, broiled would be great. And I could go, well, then how about have them spicy? And you go, yeah, spicy is great. Or you might go, I don't like spicy. So you're basically creating the dish with the other person by enrolling them. Because when somebody is enrolled, they want to buy. When you sell them something, they can only really think of reasons not to, but they only have two choices, yes or no. Whereas if they're there kind of shaping the menu with you, shaping the recipe with you, telling you how they like it prepared, how they cook it, how can they say they don't want it? How can they not like it? It was pretty much their idea. Yes, you told them you saw prawns on the way, but they said no to the barbecue. They wanted spicy prawns to be grilled. It's there and they're enrolled. So it's just about not being attached, not making it about you, and seeing how the world changes when you're committed and freer. It's more joyous, it's lighter, it's more playful, it's more interactive, it's much more about the other person. And I guess that's the theme of all these distinctions that we've been exploring today. It's just about what happens when we make it about the other person and not about us. Shine the light on them, on their needs, on their neuroses, on their experience, on their values. Ask questions, tell them why I would feel so honored and lucky to be working for you, rather than why you'd be so lucky to have me working for you. And suddenly the emphasis is on them, the spotlight is on them. And that is what people who feel good enough do. So the best way as adults to deal with that pained child that Simone was talking about for her and that we all recognize, the best way as adults to overcome that feeling of not being good enough is to be interested in you. And that's where we're going to have to leave it today. But thank you for being amazing. I got so much out of your shares. And I read the press release which Simone put out yesterday, and I couldn't believe that I've got anything to do with such an amazing project with such incredibly high caliber people at every level, including starting with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Remy. That was amazing.
Thank you,
Remy. Amazing, yeah. And I hope that you guys got the distinction and that thing about not being attached. Sometimes just giving some things space and just being aware, some amazing things come up and it takes you on a different journey and it creates and becomes something completely different. So I hope that was really interesting and really important that we kind of understood that. I know that most people have got to go. I know there's a few of you. So we're at the point where we're contacting mentors. And some of you still are having a little bit of thoughts about who you want your mentors are. So me and Remy are going to stay behind. And if anybody wants to have that conversation and we can kind of help you, help you think about the mentors that you want, please stay behind. And we're going to kind of have that conversation now, yeah? But thank you guys all so much. The press release will go out tomorrow. God willing. And obviously I'll send you all copies and I'll send you all details. We'll see you for Ben Frau on Friday. It's 12:30 to 1:30, Rio, is that right? Yeah, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And please, if you've got any questions in advance, please send them through. And don't be shy to ask questions. Ask loads and loads of questions, because that's why he's there. And I really want a session to be a kind of Q&A and an opportunity for you guys to get to know and make sure that he remembers you as well, because he's a good guy. And once if you're on his radar, he does kind of definitely call you for work. So thank you so much, guys. Stay around if you want to, and I'll see you all, everybody else.
Thank you. Thanks, Remy. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Simone. Thanks, Remy.
Thank you. Brilliant.